There is a silent war being waged in the minds of millions, a war that doesn't take place on a battlefield, but in bedrooms at 2 a.m., in quiet moments alone, and in the heaviness that rests behind a smile. And too often that war is lost not because people are weak, but because they've been misled about what strength truly is. Weakness and depression don't just arrive overnight. They creep in when we begin living a life disconnected from structure, aim, and truth. When you wake up day after day with no defined direction, no meaningful purpose, no hill to climb, you're not living, you're surviving. And survival without purpose is one of the fastest roads to despair. The modern world sells you a lie, that comfort is the goal, that ease is the destination, that freedom from responsibility is the reward. But here's the truth. It is responsibility that gives your life structure. It is discipline that gives your actions meaning. And it is purpose that gives you the energy to keep going when everything feels like it's falling apart. You don't fall into depression because you're broken. You fall because you've been disconnected. Disconnected from your own potential, from deep relationships, from a sense of becoming. Think about it. When you stop striving, when you abandon the pursuit of who you could be, life begins to feel like a dead end. And that's when the voice of despair starts to echo louder than your hope. So what do? You don't need a grand revolution overnight. You start small. You reintroduce order into the chaos. Clean your room not because it's dirty, but because it's symbolic. That act means you can bring light to the darkness, even in small ways. You wake up at the same time. You drink water instead of escaping into your phone. You sit with your discomfort and ask yourself, what am I running from? You begin to tell yourself the truth, even when it hurts, because there is no peace without truth, youth. And the longer you lie to yourself saying, I'm fine, saying nothing matters, saying I can't, the longer you live under a story that chains you to weakness. This fight won't be easy. Healing is messy. Climbing out of the pit is painful. But no one ever became strong by avoiding the weight. Strength is built by carrying something heavy, starting with yourself. So if you feel weak right now, if you're facing depression or despair, understand this. That pain you're feeling, it's not the end. It's the beginning. It's the wake-up call. It's the signal that something inside of you is demanding more, demanding growth, demanding honesty, demanding that you stand up and say, I refuse to stay here. You don't need to be perfect. You just need to be real. Real enough to admit you're struggling. Real enough to take responsibility for your healing. Real enough to believe just a little that tomorrow can be different if you act today. Let that belief guide you. Let that tiny flame grow. Because even in the darkest night, a single spark can light the way forward. And you are that spark. Let me know if you want this turned into a YouTube script, audio narration, or even short-form content for reels or shorts. When individuals live without a clear sense of purpose or direction, it creates a kind of existential vacuum that becomes increasingly difficult to escape from. This isn't just about not having a job or a hobby. It's about lacking a fundamental reason to get up in the morning, a meaningful path that gives structure to one's daily experience. Purpose gives life its context. Without it, even the most pleasurable moments can feel hollow. People often underestimate how important it is to have a compelling why that drives their actions. Without that internal compass, life starts to feel aimless. And that feeling of aimlessness breeds helplessness, fatigue, and eventually depression. The mind begins to ask dangerous questions like, what's the point? Or why bother? Questions that can spiral into deeper emotional instability. When you don't have a goal to aim at, every obstacle feels like a dead end rather than a challenge. Every failure feels like confirmation of worthlessness rather than a stepping stone. Purpose acts as a psychological immune system. It gives you the strength to endure discomfort because you understand that the pain is part of something greater. You're more willing to wake up early, to study harder, to go to the gym, to push yourself through fatigue. Not because these things are easy, but because they serve a larger vision of who you are trying to become. People with purpose interpret setbacks differently. They don't crumble under the weight of difficulty. Instead, they see adversity as the cost of growth. Without that vision pulling you forward, however, hardship becomes overwhelming and demoralizing. You feel like you're suffering for nothing. That feeling eats away at your motivation until even the smallest tasks feel unbearable. Many people trapped in cycles of depression aren't inherently broken. They're simply unmoored from a meaningful direction. They haven't identified something worth sacrificing for, something that compels them to discipline their actions. Purpose isn't a luxury. It's a necessity for psychological well-being. And yet in today's world, it's becoming increasingly difficult to cultivate. We're distracted by instant gratification, bombarded by endless comparisons, and told by society to just be happy without being shown how. Real happiness is not pleasure. It's not comfort. It's the satisfaction that comes from meaning, and meaning is born through commitment to a higher aim. If you feel lost, don't chase dopamine. Chase responsibility. Choose something you care about deeply, something that demands your best. Purpose will not fall into your lap. You must wrestle with it, pursue it, craft it. And in doing so, you won't just escape weakness. You'll become someone strong enough to help others do the same. One of the most subtle yet destructive contributors to weakness and depression is the loss of personal responsibility. Responsibility is not just about doing chores or meeting deadlines. It's about owning your life, your choices, and your potential. When people begin to offload their responsibility onto others, whether it's society, family, the economy, or even fate, they unconsciously give away their own power. They start believing they are victims of circumstance, that life happens to them, not through them. This kind of mindset is incredibly dangerous because it slowly erodes a person's sense of agency, the belief that their actions matter and that they can influence the world around them. Without agency, motivation withers. Without motivation, purpose fades, and once purpose disappears, what replaces it is often a crushing sense of helplessness and futility. Taking responsibility is difficult. It means admitting that you're not everything you could be. It means confronting your flaws, your laziness, your fears, and your regrets. But in that confrontation is where the real transformation begins. Responsibility isn't a burden, it's the path out of chaos. When you decide to carry the weight of your life on your own shoulders, you start to walk differently. You stop blaming and you start building. You stop complaining and you start correcting. You stop hiding, you start healing. That doesn't mean you won't fall. Of course you will. You will! But when you've accepted responsibility, even failure becomes a teacher rather than a tormentor. You analyze it, learn from it, and use it to adjust your path. Responsibility grounds you in reality and gives your life direction. It allows you to set goals, to make plans, and to execute those plans in a meaningful way. It's important to understand that responsibility is tied to freedom. People often think that being free means doing whatever you want. That's wrong. True freedom comes when you take full responsibility for your existence. You stop living reactively and start living deliberately. You become the author of your story rather than a character lost in someone else's narrative. And that shift from victim to author is where healing from depression truly begins. Because the moment you realize that your life can improve, that you can change things even slightly by making better choices, you light a spark of hope. And hope is the antidote to despair. Taking responsibility doesn't mean you'll control everything, but it means you'll control what you can. And over time, that control compounds. Small victories build confidence, builds consistency. Consistency builds character, and character becomes the foundation upon which strength is built. The people who inspire us, who lead us, who we admire, they aren't perfect, but they are responsible. They own their flaws, they confront their demons, and they keep moving forward. That is what you must aim for, not a perfect life, but a responsible one. Because in taking responsibility, you reclaim your power, and in that power, you find the strength to rise above your weakness and step out of the shadows of depression. Another significant reason people fall into cycles of weakness and depression is the absence of meaningful goals. Without a clear direction, life begins to feel aimless, repetitive, and ultimately hollow. The mind, when deprived of a higher aim, turns inward, and not in a meditative, enlightening way, but in a self-critical, self-destructive spiral. People begin to ruminate, overthink, and replay the same fears and failures without resolution. They get stuck in their own heads, walking mental circles with no exit. That's what happens when you don't have something to aim at. A vision that demands your energy and gives you purpose. Human beings are goal-oriented creatures. We derive strength and satisfaction not just from achieving a goal, but from striving toward it. When we don't have something pulling us forward, we become vulnerable to everything that pulls us down. Depression thrives in the absence of forward motion. When you wake up without a reason, without something that matters more than your pain, your discomfort will dominate your experience. But when you wake up with a mission, even your pain can become part of your journey. Not a wall blocking your path, but a weight that builds your endurance. Now, goals don't have to be grand at first. They just need to be real. Start small. Make your bed, tidy your space. Commit to reading one chapter of a good book every day. Begin with actions that may seem insignificant, but that slowly begin to organize the chaos around you. As you begin to hit those small goals consistently, something changes inside you. Your self-respect starts to grow. And when self-respect grows, the fog begins to lift. You start to believe, perhaps for the first time in a while, that you're capable of more. And that belief, that's the seed of transformation. What's crucial is that your goals must be yours. Not what society says you should want, not what your friends are chasing, not what your parents expected from you. Real goals come from deep reflection. What kind of person do you want to become? What kind of life would make your suffering worth it? You have to dare to ask yourself those questions, because the answers will ignite the spark that depression tries so hard to extinguish. Once you set a worthy goal, even if it seems far off, you start to orient your actions and habits in its direction. You begin to walk with intention. You stop wandering and start progressing. And with progress comes clarity. You see more clearly what serves your goal and what doesn't. You begin to shed behaviors, people, and thoughts that drag you down because they no longer fit the future you're building. Goals are like compasses. They don't eliminate the struggle, but they give it meaning. They turn pain into fuel. They transform discipline into devotion. They take the noise of life and organize it into music. So if you find yourself overwhelmed by weakness and swallowed by depression, ask yourself, what are you moving toward? And if the answer is nothing, then make it your mission today to find something worth aiming at. Because once you aim, you rise. And once you rise, you start becoming someone who not only survives darkness, but learns how to light a fire in the middle of it. Another core contributor to weakness and depression that often goes unnoticed is the lack of responsibility. In today's world, responsibility is too often treated like a burden or something to be avoided. But what most people don't realize is that responsibility is not what weighs you down. It's what gives you strength. When you avoid responsibility, when you run from your duties, your commitments, your obligations to yourself and to others, you start to shrink. You become smaller than you could be. Your life becomes shallow. And when your life lacks depth, it becomes incredibly easy to feel empty and hopeless. Because you're not anchored to anything meaningful. Taking responsibility means voluntarily shouldering the weight of your own life. It means standing up and saying, no one else is going to do this for me. No one else is going to clean up my mess, fix my mind, or build my future. That's on me. And while that truth might seem intimidating at first, there is dignity in it. Because the moment you accept responsibility is the moment you begin to take back control. When you stop blaming others, your parents, your past, your circumstances, and instead focus on what you can do next, something shifts inside you. That's when weakness starts to erode. That's when depression begins to lose its grip. Responsibility also forces structure into your life. And structure, when built with purpose, creates stability. Depression feeds off of chaos, mental chaos, emotional chaos, behavioral chaos. But when you take on responsibility, you begin to introduce order. You develop routines, systems, and standards. You start showing up even when it's hard. And through that consistent showing up, even if it's messy and imperfect, you gain momentum. That momentum is the very thing depression hates, because it reminds you that you are not helpless. You are not a victim of your thoughts. You are someone who has the capacity to act in spite of them. Moreover, when you take responsibility for something greater than yourself, a relationship, a child, a purpose, a cause, you begin to transcend your own suffering. You stop living solely for pleasure or escape, and instead live for something enduring. And that shift is profound. Suddenly your life has weight in a good way. Not the weight of guilt or shame, but the weight of meaning. It's the kind of weight that builds your back, your spirit, your will. Responsibility stretches you. It makes you grow. It demands that you become more, and in the process, you start to respect yourself in ways that no achievement or validation from others ever could bring. But responsibility doesn't have to be overwhelming. It starts small. Maybe it's waking up on time, going to the gym, helping a friend, or finishing something you started. Every act of responsibility is a building block. You stack them slowly, and one day you look around and realize you're no longer the same person who felt lost or weak. You're someone who can carry a load and not just survive, but lead. And when you lead yourself with responsibility, others begin to trust you. The world starts responding differently. Doors open, opportunities appear. Not because life suddenly became easier, but because you became stronger. So if you're dealing with weakness and depression, don't wait for motivation to show up. Don't wait for someone to rescue you. Rescue yourself by asking, what can I take responsibility for today? And then do it imperfectly, awkwardly, even fearfully. Because action in the face of uncertainty is the definition of courage. And courage stacked over time becomes confidence. That's how you reclaim your life. Not by avoiding responsibility, but by embracing it with both hands and saying, this is my life, and I will rise to meet it. A huge contributor to weakness and depression is the failure to maintain discipline in your life. Discipline is the foundational structure upon which a strong and resilient mind is built. Without discipline, you're at the mercy of your emotions, your impulses, and the randomness of the world. Many people think freedom is the absence of structure, but the truth is, real freedom comes from discipline. When you are undisciplined, your life becomes chaotic. You sleep at inconsistent hours, you eat whatever your emotions crave, you procrastinate, and you drift from one moment to the next without clarity or control. This chaos leaves you feeling lost, unaccomplished, and unworthy, which fuels a cycle of negative self-perception and deepens depression. It's not about being perfect. It's about creating a rhythm in your life that reinforces your value through consistent action. Discipline isn't just about external routines. It's also internal. It's about how you speak to yourself, how you manage your thoughts, how you respond to discomfort. Weakness grows in people who avoid discomfort, but discipline demands that you confront it. It says, I know this is hard, but I'm going to do it anyway. That internal strength compounds over time. You start to realize that you don't need to feel good to do good. You don't need to wait for the perfect moment or the perfect mood. You act regardless. That's what builds true confidence, knowing that you will keep your word to yourself even when it's not convenient or easy. That's what separates those who stay stuck in weakness from those who rise above it. When you're disciplined, you don't just survive, you begin to pursue excellence. And excellence is not just about achievement, it's about honoring your potential. When you wake up on time, when you stick to your plans, when you push through a workout or choose the hard right over the easy wrong, you are sending a message to your subconscious. I matter. My goals matter. My future matters. That belief is powerful because most depression is fueled by the sense that nothing you do makes a difference. But discipline proves otherwise. It's physical proof that your choices do matter, that your actions have meaning, and that you are capable of shaping your reality, even if it's just one decision at a time. Most importantly, discipline provides stability. And when your mind is overwhelmed or fragile, stability is everything. Having a routine doesn't make your problems disappear, but it gives you something solid to stand on while you face them. And as you stack small wins, showing up to work on time, eating healthy, turning off distractions, you begin to trust yourself. That trust becomes self-respect, and self-respect is one of the greatest shields against depression. It says, even if the world crumbles around me, I won't crumble with it. I have structure, I have discipline, I have me. So understand this, you are not weak because you feel tired or because life is hard. You are only weak when you refuse to take control of what you can control. And discipline is that control. It's not glamorous, it's not loud, but it's dependable, it's steady, and it's within your reach. Start with small commitments and keep them. Prove to yourself that you are capable of change, not through motivation or emotion, but through daily, disciplined action. That's how you rebuild a broken self. That's how you become strong. One of the biggest mistakes that contributes to a person's ongoing weakness and depression is the habit of avoiding responsibility. At the core of much depression is a deep sense of meaninglessness, a feeling that life is aimless, that suffering has no purpose, and that there's nothing to strive for. When you don't see a reason to get out of bed in the morning, When your existence feels like a cycle of empty repetition, it becomes incredibly hard to find the strength to face the day. That's because human beings are not designed to live without meaning. We're not just biological machines going through the motions. We're driven by purpose. We crave direction. Without a deeper reason for why we suffer, we crumble under the weight of our pain. And so the antidote to despair is not comfort, it's meaning. To combat weakness and depression, you must actively seek meaning in your life, not wait for it to show up, not hope someone hands it to you. You must build it. You construct meaning through the pursuit of responsibility, the pursuit of something greater than yourself, the pursuit of contribution. That can be your family, your work, your art, your faith, your community. It doesn't have to be some grand or dramatic mission. Even small, consistent efforts towards something that matters can begin to transform how you feel about life. Cleaning your room, taking care of a pet, helping a friend, learning a new skill. These might seem like trivial acts, but they're seeds of purpose. And when you tend to them, your spirit begins to grow stronger. The mistake people make is thinking that they must feel meaningful before they act. But action comes first. Feelings follow. Feelings follow. When you choose to engage in a task that demands effort and attention, when you carry out a duty even when you don't feel like it, you slowly start to climb out of the abyss. You begin to prove to yourself that you matter because something depends on you. That's how meaning arises, from being needed, from voluntarily accepting a burden that makes the world around you even slightly better. That's not a burden that crushes you, that's a burden that strengthens you. Because now your life has weight, and with that weight comes stability. One of the traps of depression is that it whispers lies to you. Lies like you're worthless, we're broken, we're a burden, but meaning shatters those lies. When you have meaning, you don't need constant reassurance or external validation. You have a compass inside you, pointing forward. Even when the path is hard, even when it's lonely, you walk it with your head high because you know why you're walking. That knowing your why can carry you through storms. It gives your suffering context, and when suffering has context, it becomes bearable. Not easy, but bearable. And with time, even beautiful. If you feel weak, if you feel lost, start by asking yourself what kind of life would be worth the struggle. What would make all this pain mean something? Then aim at that vision, no matter how far off it seems. Break it down. Take the smallest possible step toward it today. Because meaning is not discovered in a flash of insight, it's built brick by brick, day by day, choice by choice. And as you build, you'll find that the fog starts to lift. You'll find strength where you thought there was only fatigue. You'll find purpose in the places you once overlooked. Life will never be without suffering. But if you find the courage to carry that suffering with a sense of purpose, it transforms. It becomes fuel for growth. And that growth doesn't just heal you, it inspires others. Your decision to seek meaning despite pain sends a powerful message to those still stuck in darkness, that there is a way forward, that even when it hurts, life can still be deeply, profoundly worth living.